Pretend that you're a Roman citizen in the 3rd century and you hear about an execution that just happened. The man that was killed was some big shot in the church, known for his benevolence and kindness, and you hear that while he was being executed, he was cracking jokes while he was praying to God. Was he like crazy or something? And then you hear that the people who were there were so moved by his execution and how he conducted himself that they've already converted. Who the heck was this guy? And what kind of jokes does somebody make while they're being executed? We need some answers. Howdy, y'all, and welcome back to another episode of the Sanctified Podcast, the show where we explore the stories of various saints throughout history, learn about what they did, and how we came to recognize them as saints today. And once again, I'm traveling, so if it sounds a little different from previous episodes, that's why. In today's episode, we're going to explore the life of Saint Lawrence, a man so confident in his faith that he made jokes while he was dying. Saint Lawrence, or Saint Lorenzo, was born around December 31st, 225, in Huesca, a Roman province in what is modern-day Spain. It is generally accepted that his parents were actually the martyrs Aurentius and Pacientia. As a young adult studying at Saragossa, he even met a young Pope Sixtus II. Sixtus, at the time, was a very well-respected teacher and widely considered one of the best. And through the lessons, he and Lawrence grew pretty darn close, and they actually traveled together for a short while. It was a time when many people were traveling to Rome to seek higher learning and a better connection to God, so the two decided they would do that together. Then after Sixtus was elected to be Pope, so fast forward a few years, he ordained Lawrence as a deacon when he was just 32 years old, and it really wasn't long before he appointed him as Archdeacon of Rome. That's a pretty big deal. In this position, he oversaw the treasury of the Vatican and handled the giving of alms to the poor, and he dutifully carried out his charge, always helping any way he could. And from that point on, that was kind of his life. He gladly served as deacon until Emperor Valerian declared an edict in 258, and this edict said that all bishops, priests, and deacons were to be executed. Pope Sixtus II himself was included, and on August 6th of that year, he was captured during a liturgy at the cemetery of St. Calixtus and was executed immediately. Lawrence was also at that cemetery with the Pope, and he was actually pretty devastated that the Pope was killed and he wasn't. Not just because he was friends with Pope Sixtus, but also because the Pope was a holy martyr now, and Lawrence felt that his survival was a sign that he wasn't devoted enough. He wasn't granted the honor of becoming a martyr, which is a little odd, but at the same time, if everybody else is being killed for their faith and you're not, it might raise some questions like, why wasn't I killed? It's sort of like survivor's guilt. But as Sixtus was dying, he told Lawrence not to be sad, but to persevere. They were killed because they were old and weak. Lawrence was young, and he could still do good. Sixtus consoled the deacon by saying that they will be rejoined in 3 days. After the Pope was killed, the Roman prefect of the region demanded that Lawrence give the church's money and treasures to the prefect, so that he could present them to the emperor. Lawrence asked for a little time to gather everything, and he was granted the request, and so the prefect gave him 3 days. But Lawrence had other plans. Now, remember that Lawrence was already a very generous deacon. He frequently sold off valuable items that he didn't need to help provide for the poor, and he didn't really save much in excess of what was like the bare minimum needed. So the prefect probably wouldn't be happy anyways, because Lawrence didn't really have that much of a treasure. Sure, he had some, and the church had resources, but it probably would have paled in comparison to what he had built up in his mind. But in any case, Lawrence gathered as much as he could, and then he distributed it to the poor. So the prefect would get nothing. By the 3rd day, August 10th, Lawrence had given out pretty much everything the church had, and there was nothing left for the prefect to steal. And on the morning of August 10th, he went to the prefect, and the prefect asked, "Where the heck's all the treasure, dude?" Lawrence turned, and he gestured to all of the poor, the sick, the suffering people of the region, and said that they were the true treasures of the church. And he said, "Here are the treasures of the church. You see, the church is truly rich, far richer than your emperor. The gold that you so eagerly desire is a vile metal and serves to incite men of all manner of crimes. Well, you can imagine how well the prefect took that. His immediate response was, "Do you mock me? I know you desire to die, but you shall not die immediately. You shall die by inches." And so, he ordered his men to prepare a large gridiron and light coals beneath it. It was the type of thing that you would cook a wild hog or deer on. They certainly weren't cooking any wild game. The prefect had Lawrence chained onto the scorching gridiron, and Lawrence didn't really resist. The Christians witnessing the events all said that his face seemed to glow, and his burning body actually gave off a pleasant scent, not a terrible odor of burning flesh. And there's actually a pretty funny line attributed to St. Lawrence when he was being killed. He said, "Let my body now be turned. One side is broiled enough." He made a joke about his death because he was that confident in his faith and where he was going. It's kind of epic. But that wasn't all. The executioner actually did turn him over after the prefect ordered him to. And then after a short while on the other side, Lawrence had another comment for his executioners. He told them, "It is cooked enough. You may now eat." Of course, that line of "one side's done, turn me over, and now I'm ready," may be a little bit of a stretch of the truth, but it didn't really seem that out of line with Lawrence's character. He was kind of a jovial guy in general, so it's possible it's not true. I like to think it did happen because that's a pretty awesome story. Lawrence continued to pray until his dying breath on the gridiron, and multiple Roman senators who were present to witness it were so moved by Lawrence's devotion that they too became Christians. Some of them, on the spot, they decided they were going to convert. And then during, or maybe shortly after his death, there were miracles recorded from Lawrence, but today all we have is reference to those records. The records themselves were lost to history. However, Gregory of Tours recorded miracles from St. Lawrence in his own works. Long after his death, so almost 2 centuries after his death, Gregory of Tours wrote about Father Sanctulus, who was rebuilding a church of St. Lawrence because it had been attacked and burned. Sanctulus needed a lot of help to rebuild the ruined church, but after a short time, he realized that he was out of food. He prayed for St. Lawrence's intercession, and then, when he looked into his basket for more food, he found a fresh loaf of bread. Of course, one loaf of bread isn't going to feed a whole team of hardworking builders, but it was better than nothing. When Sanctulus thought he had given it all out, he looked back into the basket, only to discover that it was refreshed with another loaf. This same loaf multiplied for the next 10 days while the repairs were being completed. Another time, there's a different priest repairing a different church of St. Lawrence when they realized that a beam they were given would be too short to use. He prayed for St. Lawrence's intercession, and almost immediately the beam grew. It grew so much that it was too big to use, so they had to cut it down to size. And the parts that were cut off were dispersed to various people from that church, and many people said they had healing properties. Lawrence was canonized long before the modern process, so he didn't need any miracles attributed to him. He was already known as a saint at that time when Gregory Tours was alive, but we already have 2 miracles attributed to him. If it was a newer guy or he wasn't already canonized, bam, we have what we would need, and after the process of investigations and all that, he should be canonized. If you're into astronomy at all, you might know about the Perseid meteor shower. Well, it just so happens to come every year around St. Lawrence's feast day, so some people started to call the meteor shower the Tears of St. Lawrence, which I think is kind of cool. A little bit on the random side, I would say, but still kind of fun. St. Lawrence feast day is August 10th, and he's the patron saint of deacons, the poor, cooks and chefs, comedians, huescasmen, and really so much more. According to CatholicSaints.info, he's a patron saint for over 50 places and groups. So I'm not going to list everything here, just some of the big ones that were mentioned across multiple sources. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll do my best to answer them. So what do you think of St. Lawrence? What about what he said while on the gridiron? I hope you found his story interesting, and I look forward to learning your thoughts on St. Lawrence. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to support the channel, you can subscribe, download the episode, like, comment, share with your friends, or send me a suggestion on a saint to check out by emailing me at sanctifiedpodcast@proton.me. You can find the show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Podbean, and more. And I upload once a week, Thursday, 3 p.m. So if you want to catch the newest episode, that's when to check it out. Take care and have a wonderful day.